So, a while ago, I did a poll here on my community tab, and last I checked, we got a huge amount of responses. A grand total of 0 people voted on that poll. And so, what I planned on doing next felt a little unguided in that sense. And one of the options on there was something along the lines of talking about a band that I was really into in high school. And that's the one I chose to go with. Now, those other options, I'm still open to making those videos at some point. Maybe for this channel, maybe for a different future channel down the line. I don't know. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about a band that I was super into in high school that you've probably never even heard of. I'm recovering from COVID, so apologies if I'm coughing and sneezing. Hopefully I'll just edit them all out. So, growing up, I was only really allowed to listen to music that was explicitly Christian, either in message or in the Acts Association. There was an entire industry of Christian music that was sort of building a presence in culture just beneath what was actually popular. And the fact is that a lot of it was bad. And I recognize that as somebody that listened to a lot of it, even the stuff that I really liked growing up, upon revisitation, it's pretty abysmal. And so I don't really listen to that kind of music anymore. My allergy to it, unlike most people, wasn't born out of its sterileness or its sort of obsession with religion. I grew up surrounded by religious iconography and people that took religion way too seriously. So none of that put a sour taste in my mouth. What put a sour taste in my mouth was the fact that it was all I was able to listen to. The only radio stations my parents were willing to play were K-Love and Smile FM, both stations that explicitly played nothing but Christian music. And not only do they only play Christian music, but they also have DJs that are as milquetoast as you can imagine. Some of the most boring people you will ever meet. And the fact is that radio DJs aren't exactly known for being the height of personality and intrigue. So it's like, you take people that already have a sort of reputation for being not very interesting, and then you just sort of amplify that by needing to be even less interesting to, be agreeable to a Christian demographic. Now, there were record labels that basically built their entire identity around signing artists that were explicitly Christian. And a lot of people made it their goal to only listen to artists that were signed to these types of labels. And a lot of these labels made deals with places like the Christian bookstore or other similarly branded stores that sold books, music, media that was explicitly Christian. They made deals with these stores so that they would stock their artists, because our artists are Christian, unlike these other artists that, yeah, they may believe in Christianity, but, they're still singing about things that you don't necessarily want your kid to hear. So, like, you can only guarantee that your kids are going to hear wholesome, Christian, Sunday school style songs if you buy the music from our label. And a lot of these were like, I don't know what you call them. I'm not like a person who knows how the industry works, but they're basically like a subcategory of a larger mainstream label. Like, a lot of people were basically signed to things like EMI and Capitol Records, but they basically created like a sub-label within that record label that only signed Christian artists. So, whether you're listening to, Francesca Battistelli or Katy Perry, odds are you're lining the same executives' pockets. Now, I not only grew up in a household that was extremely religious, I also grew up in a household that lived extremely paycheck to paycheck. Sorry if the frame changed. My wife was getting mad because I wasn't texting her back. This all culminates in a situation where I have a very limited sort of type of music that I can listen to, but also I'm limited by the fact that I can't just go to the store and buy whatever CD I want. I can't just roll up to the Christian bookstore or even Walmart and just scoop up every CD under the Christian section and then, figure out which ones I do and don't like. I have to spend actual money on these things, and a lot of times it's money that I've earned through either doing housework for my family or doing work for people at church, people at school, all this other kind of stuff. Bear in mind, this was like pre-Spotify, pre-Apple Music. Like, streaming services didn't exist at this point, so all of my music had to be purchased, and it had to be able to fit on whatever MP3 player I owned at the time. I think one of the first ones I owned was like a hand-me-down iPod, like an iPod Nano, and then I eventually upgraded to a Zune, and then eventually upgraded to like the fat Zune that had like 100 gigs of space on it because I was running out of space for all my music. Because, spoilers, I found ways to collect a lot of music for free. And so I was running into a lot of these types of issues, and I had to come up with creative ways to fix things. And I'll give you a bit of an insight into how all of this developed. It was so strict on the type of music that I could listen to that when my dad found I Just Had Sex by Lonely Island on the computer, first of all, he deleted it. And second of all, he took my Zune away. And at that point, the only thing I could use to listen to music was either I could use physical CDs in a CD player, or I could use my 3DS, or maybe it was a DSi at the time. But either way, I could use the DS that had an MP3 player built into it, but I could only fit the music on it that could fit on the SD card, and the SD card already had information that it needed to have in order to run certain applications on my DS. So I have a distinct memory of being in Mackinac City, sitting in Dixie Saloon, listening to music through my DS, because I had had my MP3 player taken away at that point. This was very common for me to have things taken away. I got into a lot of disciplinary trouble. But that's a different story. We're talking about a band, right? So eventually I got a smartphone. This was like right before I went off to college. I got, I think, the iPhone 4 when I was like a senior in high school. And it was... This might date me, but like it was even like a few years old at the time that I got it. It was like a hand-me-down from like my cousin or something like that, as most nice things I had was. Eventually, I started getting pretty consistent access to the internet. It was no longer just a matter of I can only get on the computer long enough to put songs on my MP3 player. Like, I can actually get on there and I can check Facebook, scroll through I Can't Has Cheeseburger, watch YouTube videos. And I eventually started trying to find more music. Now, the problem was that I could listen to music while I was on the computer, but if I liked a song, I didn't have access to it off of the computer. So I had to figure out a way to sort of expand my horizons, get access to more music, without having to spend a whole lot of money. And iTunes was great because I ended up buying a lot of songs that were on sale. Like, songs typically cost 99 cents. And a lot of times an artist, in order to sort of push their song and try and get it a big sales boost, would discount their song to 69 cents. So I would buy 69-cent songs all the time, even if it was from an artist I wasn't really, like, familiar with or even a fan of, if it was new music and it was cheap, I was like, okay, well, bring it here. I want some of that. And that was one of the ways that I sort of made my dollars stretch. But the actual process of getting free music took manifested in a few different ways. One thing I did do a lot was I did Google free music. And I found a lot of websites that just give people's music away. And a lot of these websites were organizations that were basically just trying to give like smaller indie artists a chance, like give them an opportunity to be exposed to a lot of people. And these were a lot of websites that would report on bigger artists, but then if you go to their free section, a lot of it is just artists that they would be marked as like similar to this person, similar to that person. You like Michael W. Smith, you like this guy. You like Switchfoot, you like this band, that sort of thing. And again, all of these were Christian affiliated. I found Rapzilla, which was sort of the Christian equivalent to DatPiff. I found, I think, freeccm.com, which was like a free contemporary Christian music website. I found this like singer-songwriter band, Jenny and Tyler, that I think they only put out like 2 albums, but they were pretty good. I still get like emails from them. I'm still on their email list from like, oh gosh, what, like 12 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that. I still get emails from them, and I still occasionally read them. And I occasionally check out their new stuff. That's not the band we're talking about today, though. So, a lot of this culminated in me sort of being very plugged into what was going on in Christian music, whether it be on the indie side, whether it be with like really big artists that are signed to like major labels, or the sort of in-between stuff, the artists that like have a big following but aren't signed to a carve-out of, EMI or Capitol or, Sony Music or whatever. So that sort of brings us to a point where I start getting more into the harder rock stuff. Not quite like metal. I'm still probably, I think, a couple years away from getting into screamo at this point. But I'm super into bands like Cutlass, bands like Hawk Nelson, Switchfoot, I already mentioned. Bands that aren't hardcore, but they're like Christian rock, and they like actually kind of rock, right? And I'm getting more into the artists that will eventually go on to like make music that people consider some of the best music coming out of contemporary Christian. People like David Crowder, people like Jars of Clay, these types of people that are well respected even outside of Christian circles. This culminates in a situation where my youth minister was pretty prolific when it comes to sort of scooping up new releases from big Christian artists. And one of the artists that he put me onto was 1,000 Foot Crutch. And 1,000 Foot Crutch is they're really quite good. And I still like them to this day. Quite a few of their songs still come up on, YouTube Music Recommended. And, I still put my rock fist up, if you know what I'm saying. And I want to seek out artists that are similar. I knew that Trevor McNevin did a lot of guitar work for other people. He did several songs for Toby Mac. I believe he did the guitar work for Ignition off of Portable Sounds, which was like one of my favorite songs off that album. And, he did a lot of other stuff. He was credited on a lot of Christian artists. He did stuff with Manifest. He did stuff with a bunch of other people. And I thought, well, let's go ahead and see what he's all about. Like, who else does he work with? And better yet, who else is signed to the same label as him? Because at this point, I'm pretty familiar with the concept of record labels. Like, I'm not familiar with the concept of record labels insofar as I can wrap my head around the fact that they're probably screwing the artist over. But I am familiar enough with the fact that if you're making music and it's being distributed, you're probably on some kind of label. So let's go check it out. Like, if all I'm getting is your music from freeccm.com, or you're putting out exclusively free mixtapes on Rapzilla, you're probably not signed to a real label. But if your music is seeing play on like Smile FM, Air One, K-Love even, like, you're probably on at least some kind of semi-big label. A label that, like, actually has a pretty wide variety of artists signed to it. And so I check out the label that Thousand Foot Crutch is signed to. This is Tooth and Nail Records. Now, Tooth and Nail Records is known for basically, again, putting up your rock fist. I think Thousand Foot Crutch is probably their flagship artist. It's not their most popular artist. The overarching record label, BEC Recordings, has a ton of big names signed to it that you would recognize. Hawk Nelson, Jeremy Camp, I believe Cutlass is or was signed to it at some point. Tooth and Nail and Solid State Records are sort of like sub records labels within BEC Recordings. Solid State Records, from my understanding, was supposed to be the one that had all the Christian artists signed to it. And Tooth and Nail was the one that was just sort of a mix of different types of artists and all that. So, you know, you can imagine that I wasn't necessarily familiar with that at the time. I was just sort of getting into Tooth and Nail Records because that's what the CDs said for Thousand Foot Crutch. So, you know, I found their website, and it became one of the websites that I frequented every once in a while. And this culminated in figuring out that they actually did a thing where they released something called a sampler. And this sampler put out a bunch of music from artists that are signed to their label that are relatively new. Either new artists or new songs from their artists that have been there for a while. And it was basically an attempt to try and, like, get people to check out other artists signed to their label. Because, like, you know, I listened to Thousand Foot Crutch, I listened to Hawk Nelson, but, like, have you heard of Nine Lashes? They were trying to put their other artists out there. Like, you come to their website looking for news on Thousand Foot Crutch, you see, oh, releasing a free CD online. Heck yeah, I'm going to pick this up. And I ended up scooping up the one from 2010. And I went back and I actually looked at the track lists for all of the ones that they released. They released one in 08, one in 09, and one in 10. And those are the only ones that I really checked out because the one in 10 was the one that had the song I was looking for. And that brings us to the band. Gotta keep it lubricated. That's probably the grossest way I could have described that. Yeah. Let's see, I'm reading back through the script. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I didn't mention Lecrae's Reach Records. That was like the big record label for rap. Tooth and Nail was sort of like rock, hard rock. Yeah, in the script I put Trevor McNevin is sort of like the Travis Barker of Christian music. In like the way Travis Barker is now, in that he's just sort of like shows up as a collaborator for people, does like drums for somebody, but like it winds up being that person's like best song. Like he made a bunch of great music with Machine Gun Kelly. Everything before he worked with Travis Barker was pretty mid, and everything he's made since not collaborating with Travis Barker anymore has also been pretty mid. I'm not going to say that anybody in the Christian sphere had that exact same phenomenon happen to them, but I will say that a lot of songs that I found out Trevor McNevin worked on ended up being one of my favorite songs off of whatever album it was on. So I feel like that's pretty apt. I also mentioned here in the script, I forgot to say this when I was just kind of yapping, but I also mentioned that I was such a big fan of Thousand Foot Crutch that I even went out and bought the CD for Trevor McNevin's side project, FM Static, which is something I think anyone who's interested in Thousand Foot Crutch should definitely check out. I think they have like 3 albums out that came out in like the late 2000s, maybe like the early 2010s, maybe it was like the mid to late 2000s. I don't remember, but it was a project that Trevor McNevin was working on sort of parallel to Thousand Foot Crutch, where it was much more acoustic-y, much more laid back. It still had the writing you come to expect from Thousand Foot Krutch. It was still very introspective, but it had a lot more detail put into it. It had a much larger emphasis put on the story, whereas Thousand Foot Krutch feels like a lot more of the emphasis is put on like putting you in a good mood, hyping you up, that kind of stuff. I definitely understand why Trevor felt like he needed to create this side project. It's really good. I highly recommend it. So let's sort of talk about Tooth and Nail and what you come to expect from artists on Tooth and Nail. I mentioned Thousand Foot Krutch. I mentioned Nine Lashes. These are bands that are pretty rock, but it goes beyond that. Tooth and Nail was also the label that Underoath was signed to. And if you don't know who Underoath is, go look them up. I'll wait. Did you read any good books lately? My wife bought me like a compilation of, I think like the first few Agatha Christie novels that I really need to get into. I haven't really read significantly since I was... Okay, they're back. Alright, so, right, like, that stuff's crazy. And they also have Demon Hunter signed to Tooth and Nail. And if you don't know who Demon Hunter is, just think Underoath, but the screaming is a lot more visceral. And there's, I would say, more of it. The clean vocalist in Underoath does a lot more of the heavy lifting. And I could make a whole video about Underoath. I probably will. I think it's on the list of things that I want to make a video about at some point. But for now, let's focus on what we're talking about. So we've sort of set the spectrum. Like, Thousand Foot Krutch is sort of here, and then, like, Underoath is down here. And, like, Tooth and Nail exists in this range of artists that create music that is hard rock or metal or adjacent to those genres in some way. Now, BEC Recordings, the overarching label, has non-rock artists, or at least Christian rock in like the way normies understand Christian rock, like signed to them. People like Jeremy Camp, people like Hawk Nelson, people that like you could argue are rock, but like are rock in the same sense as like Bro Country was country, right? Like, it had a lot of influences. It had a lot of things that it was trying to be, but the one thing it wasn't trying to be was the thing everyone associated it with. And ultimately, it sort of became the flagship for what people consider Christian rock, which I think is a big misstep in popular culture, because the real name that people gave to this type of music was contemporary Christian music, and those kinds of artists would get play on things like K-Love, like Smile FM, but like the Christian rock stuff would sometimes get play on the more sort of independently owned ones, things like Air One, things like Smile FM. Like, you would hear like first album Hawk Nelson on Smile FM, but you wouldn't hear Hawk Nelson on K-Love until probably their last or second to last album, because they got progressively more CCM as the band existed. Not to say that they got bad. I think their last two albums were really good, but they are a much softer type of music than their first album was. Again, first album, big feature from Trevor McNevin. Last album, big feature from the guy from Mercy Me. So that's kind of the spectrum that we're working with here. So, you know, Jeremy Camp, Hawk Nelson signed to BEC Records. You know, Thousand Foot Krutch, Underoath signed to Tooth and Nail. We've sort of separated the two. We've put a line down the middle. These are the people that make CCM. These are the people that make actual Christian rock, Christian metal. And Underoath is like one of the progenitors of an entire genre. They basically created their own genre, metalcore. So, you know, these artists are a big deal. Not only in the sense that they have a record deal, that they sell a lot of records. They're like influential. People that play this type of music look up to these people. So, there's a lot of great talent on this label, and a lot of people look to this label for good rock music. So I'm listening through the sampler, I'm thinking, all right, hit me with the good stuff. I'm still not at the point where I'm really into Underoath and Demon Hunter. Like, I've listened to a couple Demon Hunter songs because my friend's super into it. He keeps trying to get me into them, Impending Doom, other stuff. It isn't for like another 4-ish years that I really think hard about the type of music that I sort of overlooked back then and try and like revisit it again and find out that I missed out on a lot of great stuff. But for now, I'm feeling stuff like Thousand Foot Crutch, Nine Lashes, even like Anne Boleyn is another really good one that's signed to Tooth and Nail Records. Band that I still listen to this day as well. So this is what I'm coming to expect from this sampler. We're about 4 or 5 tracks into the sampler, and I get hit with a song I was not expecting. We get hit with the acoustic-y singer-songwriter stuff. Not even CCM. We're not even talking about the type of stuff that like Michael W. Smith would have put out in like the 90s. We're not even talking about late era Hawk Nelson. We're talking about like, I don't know, almost something you'd expect from like an easy listening station, right? And I know that that's sort of like kind of an insult depending on who you ask, but like, it kind of slaps though. Like, it's kind of a bop. Like, song's 2 a.m. by Poema, and it's really good. It's also really good, and I don't know, it's just really good, okay? And I'm sort of flabbergasted. I go into this hoping to find artists like, Thousand Foot Crutch or Anne Boleyn, artists that, I can throw on and feel like I'm, my in my emo phase or something like that. This is like my Panic at the Disco or Fall Out Boy. Not that I knew who either of those were at the time. So I'm feeling like I'm like getting like a gut punch or really getting like sideswiped by something I was not expecting. This is like the type of music that I would expect to get from like freeccm.com, not a sampler from Tooth and Nail Records. Like, this is not where I find this type of music. So, what do I do with this? Well, immediately, I take to Wikipedia and I go, show me every single thing this artist has done up to this point. And I believe at the time, so this is like 2010, 2011, I think they had one EP out and possibly an album? I don't remember when their first album came out. They at least had an EP. And again, my purchasing power is pretty limited, but I mean, there is absolutely zero amount of hesitation between finding the EP and purchasing it on whatever music purchasing service I happen to use. I yoinked it up as quick as I could and immediately fell in love with multiple songs off of it. So this band, who seemingly has just like spawned from nothing, basically they've like performed alchemy and created a band from whole cloth and signed them to the exact wrong label to sign a band like this. And somehow they have carved a niche for themselves as being very singer-songwritery, but still having a lot of musical chops. Like, the songs are intricate, the melodies are really interesting, they have wonderful harmonies. And again, this is all from like a 6-song EP. Like, every song on the EP is a bop. Like, you could put any one of them on, and I'm gonna sing along. Like, I know all of them. And this is also true of the album that they put out after it, and also the album they put out after that. Like, it's all really good. Okay, just to sort of put a finer point on it, I've got a bunch of artists listed that were or are signed to Tooth and Nail Records. You might recognize some of these. So I already mentioned Demon Hunter, I already mentioned Anne Boleyn, I already mentioned Under Oath. Disciple is signed to them. POD, Youth of the Nation. POD, they're signed to Tooth and Nail. I think that's it as far as the ones that I got listed here. As far as that goes, that sort of wraps it up in a nice little bow. Now, warning, a lot of the information I've gotten, even up to this point, has been from Wikipedia. So, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, but especially for this next part, because Poema took I think their website down at one point, and they had like a biography section that sort of told their story as a band, and that's where I'm getting a lot of this information from for like the preliminary stuff. And it was copied onto Wikipedia, and Wikipedia cites their website, but when you click on the link to their website, it 404s. So take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt, is all I'm saying. Also, I'm going to refer to them in the past tense, even though technically they haven't broken up. They both live in different parts of the country. They barely have a presence on each other's social media, and they haven't posted to the official Poema page on any platform in almost 10 years at this point. Well, that's not true, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that. And ultimately, I feel like they've moved past this, but I do think that there is a possibility that they'll reunite at some point. At least I hope there's a possibility they'll reunite at some point, because the two of them together has been really good in the past, and they made really good music, and I would love to see what it would sound like now that both of them are much older and have sort of come into their own as both people and as artists. Not just musicians, but artists in general. Sort of their way of expressing themselves. And it may be that their paths have diverged so much that I don't know what type of sound it would be if they tried to come together and meld their two, but I'm getting in the weeds on this. We're talking about things that don't really matter. The point is, I'm going to refer to them in the past tense, even though there's been no official breakup. But I feel like they sort of retired the project at this point. Think of it like, this is a stupid example, but think of it like your favorite Martian. Like, he quit making it and basically told everyone, hey, this project's over. But like, there's still a possibility in the future he'll resurrect it. And he did. And there's still a possibility in the future they'll resurrect this. I hope they do, because I'm a big fan. We'll sort of just jump right into it. All of that being said, Poema was an acoustic singer-songwriter duo from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Sorry, I got the thing down here. It's really hard to read it and then just repeat it back to you. I'm really bad at this. The band consists of Shailene Louise and Danielle Puckett. They grew up in a religious family, something we have in common. Their dad played guitar and passed his love of music onto them. There's a video of Danielle, who goes by Elle. I'm going to refer to them as Elle from this point on, because that's sort of how they refer to themselves. And I'm going to try to use gender-neutral pronouns because they're pretty private about their lives, so I don't want to make any sort of assumptions on whether or not they still identify the same way that they did when they were in this band. So I may refer to them as a sister at some point, just because that's what they were when a lot of these things happened. But I don't know what they are now. I don't know what they identify as or anything like that. I don't want to make assumptions. And maybe that comes as a surprise, considering the fact that I grew up religious, I'm still religious, and this is a band I'm talking about that was also religious, at least at one point. But being religious doesn't mean I have to be disrespectful. So we're gonna be respectful. And if it comes out that I was tiptoeing around a landmine that didn't exist, then I will at least find solace in the fact that I cared enough to tiptoe in the first place. There's a video of Elle performing in Starbucks in 2001. So I found a YouTube channel. I reference this later in the script, but I'm just going to say it now. I found a YouTube channel that was created by their dad, and it features a ton of videos of him and them, and I assume their siblings or maybe their cousins, all just sort of doing family stuff. There's like videos of them like hauling stuff with a pickup. There's videos of them doing performances. There's like covers that they recorded when they were like little before the band existed. But specifically, there's a clip that he had recorded in 2001, but then uploaded to YouTube years later, of Elle performing in a Starbucks in New Mexico. It's interesting because as somebody who grew up listening to this band and not knowing that any of this other stuff that their dad uploaded existed, watching it and listening to them perform, and knowing that eventually they're going to go on to actually be a musician that honestly sells a decent amount of records and does pretty well for themselves, even after Poema ends. Like a touring artist that tours with like big names you'd recognize, but we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. The wild thing is that I wonder if the people in that Starbucks knew what was coming. I may or may not put a link to the channel. I don't know if this is something that Elle and Shay want out there. Oh yeah, Shailene goes by Shay. So we're just going to put that out there. That's how I'm going to refer to them from here on out. I don't know if the two of them want these videos publicized. The videos don't have a ton of views. I think even when they were a band that people were actively listening to and like clamoring for new releases, I don't know if very many people knew that these videos existed. I feel like I've sort of like stumbled into their house almost and like rummaged through their home videos. But I'm going to reference it anyway because I find it really interesting. I may play a clip from it or something like that. But that's where we're at. There's a video of her performing in a Starbucks in 2001. And as somebody whose family didn't really drink coffee, and I lived in a pretty remote part of the Midwest, I didn't even know Starbucks existed until I was like already like almost an adult. So to think that Starbucks even existed in 2001 is kind of crazy to me. So let's sort of get into the history of the band more specifically. So they formed Poema in 2008. There's like 2 separate articles that reference the band as being formed in like 2016 or something like that. The band basically ended in 2016. So saying that the band formed in 2016 is sort of like saying I was born in 2024. You can clearly tell from the way that I look, I didn't, right? But, you know, no one's going to fact check you. Maybe at this point they had probably taken their official website down, so you couldn't just like go to poema.com and like check. And I guess going to Wikipedia was just too hard. Anyway, so they formed in 2008 and they got signed to Tooth and Nail in 2009. So Elle and Shay, when they got signed, were 17 and 19 respectively. So that can kind of give you an idea of how old they are now if you're good at quick maths. While they were on Tooth and Nail, they worked with fellow label mate Aaron Sprinkle to create their first EP. He did a lot of the production work on that. And Aaron Sprinkle is a name that I was already familiar with because I'm mildly on the spectrum. My wife doesn't like when I say that because when I tested for it, I just barely missed the cutoff. But I mean, I feel like I can say I kind of am. And part of that manifested in the fact that, like, I read the insert books for a lot of CDs. Save me. Coca-Cola, you're my only hope. I read the inserts, like the little booklets for a lot of CDs. A lot of times I would go in there looking for lyrics so that I could, like, clarify if, like, a line had, like, weird slurs to it or whatever, or the person was just not enunciating very well. I could sort of clarify, like, what on earth were they talking about here? What word is this? And so I did a lot of that. In addition, I also would look at the producer credits and who did different instruments on different songs. That's how I found out that Trevor McNevin did the guitar work for Ignition and several other songs. And all of this to say, I recognize the name Aaron Sprinkle because he worked with a ton of artists that I and you probably know. I'm just going to rattle them off, alright? So, he did production work for KJ52, Falling Up, Hawk Nelson, Jeremy Camp, Cutlass, Reliant K, Thousand Foot Crutch, Demon Hunter, and he eventually featured Elle on one of his own songs called Invincible. It's good. It's quite good. And Elle is really good on it. I would definitely recommend checking it out. The band eventually left Tooth and Nail and became independent in 2014. After the release of their first and only independent project, Pretty Speeches, the band goes dark. If you want to get any more information on where they go from here, we need to start stalking them on social media. So let's start with their official Facebook update. One of the first things I did when I was researching for this video was I went to their official Facebook page. I don't think I was following it at the time, which is crazy. You'd think I would have liked them on Facebook. But I guess at some point I either unliked them or like Facebook unliked them for me, or maybe I just never liked them on Facebook. Because there's some things that I was super into in middle and high school that I just never liked on Facebook. Because eventually things you liked on Facebook went from being things that showed up on your profile to being pages that would post things and then you'd see them on your homepage. At that point, liking things on Facebook went from being something that sort of signified the type of person you are to affecting the type of posts that you saw. And that was the point where I stopped liking things on Facebook. I went ahead and took a screenshot of the Facebook post because I never know if these things are going to be taken down at some point. Their official website ended up getting taken down. It could be that their page gets hacked or something. It seems pretty inactive, but it still has a pretty decent amount of likes and followers, so it could be a pretty high priority target for scammers. So who knows? It's tough to pinpoint when exactly a band stops existing, stops being a band. But I think it's safe to say that Poema ceased to be something Elle and Shay put effort into around February of 2016. Which is why those articles saying that this band formed in 2016 is so galling to me. Because the band basically stopped existing pretty much the second 2016 started. Like, we got 2 months into 2016 before Poema decided that this wasn't something that they wanted to do. That's the last time they posted about a show on the Poema Instagram. This is the last time that they performed a show together and posted about it publicly on the band's page. And I went ahead and put a link to it in this script. Maybe I'll put up a screenshot, like right here or something. So where are they now? What have they been doing since then? I mean no offense by this, but we're going to start with the least interesting of the two, Shay. And the reason she's less interesting is because she sort of retreated into just sort of being a mom. She got married and she has a son. She spends most of her time and energy these days painting, which is why I mentioned earlier that they've been spending time on their art, not necessarily their music, because she spends a lot of her energy painting. You can see her paintings on her Facebook page. I went ahead and liked it. Paintings are good. I'm not going to say that they like slap or that they're a bop, like I did about the Poema stuff. But that's because paintings, in my opinion, it takes a lot for painting to slap or for it to be a bop. Like, these paintings aren't going to get put up in the Louvre anytime soon, but like if I had known she existed before this, I might have commissioned her to make my save the dates for my wedding. Her website describes her as a botanical watercolor painter and Lord of the Rings super nerd. So if that's something that you're into, maybe go check out her social media presence. And I put a link to her website. She offers commissions or prints of existing works on her site. I really wanted to buy one of her paintings and like put it up in like the background of this video, but I didn't. Maybe by the time I make the next one, I'll have convinced my wife to let me spend money on it. But for right now, I could barely convince my wife to spend money on a McChicken, let alone a painting from somebody that she doesn't even know. I mean, in my opinion, though, her paintings are very good. And she seems like a really nice person. Her whole online presence is her paintings. So it seems like she doesn't do music anymore, which is a big reason why her section is so short. And like, I said no offense intended by what I'm about to say. Less interesting than her sister's section, which is going to be quite a bit longer. But I will say that both of them are worth checking out and sort of looking into. But before getting into that, I'll end by saying this. Looking through her blog and artwork reminded me of when my wife and I were picking designs for our save the date. It's very relaxing and very pretty. I mentioned already that if I had known that this was the type of artist that she was now, I probably would have commissioned her to make us our save the date, or like bought one of her artworks to use for save the dates, because they're very pretty and they just remind me of like this the templates that we looked through when we were doing it, like on Walgreens. I'm getting stuffier and stuffier as this video continues. I apologize in advance. We are going to try to remedy that right now. I did not take my morning medicine yet, so we're gonna try and power through this so that I can go eat something and take my meds. And morning meds is a bit of a misnomer. It's like 12:30. So let's get to the interesting part. Elle. You know what? Just to give you more of an idea of what I'm about, I'll let you see that is in fact a Snorlax deck box. And before you ask, it does not have a Pokemon in it. It has Yu-Gi-Oh in it. And it has my hero deck in it, which I have blinged out because it is my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh deck. You can go back on this channel and look at the previous videos, the like actual videos that I posted, not the shorts, and see that they're all Yu-Gi-Oh up to this point. I stopped doing that because here on YouTube, people would subscribe because I posted a goofy short that had nothing to do with Yu-Gi-Oh! And then they would get recommended one of my Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos, and then they'd unsubscribe. So we're not doing that anymore. So I'm getting most of the information about Elle from a few different sources. She did a 2023 interview on Voyagella.com. She did a 2019 interview that was extremely difficult to find on a podcast. It was called like some guy's playlist or whatever. He like would create a playlist and then talk about it in a podcast. And he ended up featuring one of Elle's songs in that playlist as an excuse to basically do an interview with her. And like that specific episode didn't exist on Bandcamp, and it didn't exist pretty much anywhere else that was easy to get to. I ended up having to find it on Spotify, and it didn't show up when I searched Spotify, but it showed up when I Googled it. I also found a Nicki Swift article. That's the article that had the factual error about them being formed in 2016. And I found a video which apparently used the Nicki Swift article as a source because it repeats the factual error. And she also did an interview with soundbetter.com. So the Nikki Swift article and the video that I found that basically repeats the Nikki Swift article's factual error are in reference to something that we're going to talk about later. So, again, 2000, let me see. We're talking 2009, right? So they formed in 2009. Elle was 17, so 3 years later in 2012, she moves to Nashville to pursue music more seriously. She spent years playing and teaching, but eventually got burnt out. She eventually moves to Portland and just abandons music altogether. She ends up, I think, being a barista and like a, a bartender? Yeah, she ends up bartending and being a barista for a few years in Portland. One day she gets a call to audition to play guitar for a band. Now, if you're looking at that original post from 2016, where it's talking about sort of where everyone's at, then you have a pretty good idea that the band she probably was asked to audition for was Isley, a band I had never heard of. She was asked to be, I believe, their touring guitarist. And then after she did this, she sort of became known among touring artists as somebody that would do guitar for you on tour. And she got approached by Maggie Rogers to play guitar on her world tour. I'll be honest, I don't know who Maggie Rogers is. I didn't know the name Maggie Rogers prior to making this video, and I still haven't actually gone through the effort of looking up who this person is. But she's a big enough artist that she was at Austin City Limits, so that's cool, I guess. She also accompanied Lorde on her Solar Power tour. Yeah, Royals Lorde for her Solar Power tour. Don't know what year, you'll have to look that up. She summarizes the experiences by saying that she toured the world, played SNL, put out some singles, and eventually moved to LA. Now, once she moved to LA, she was able to return to music as her full-time gig. She started producing, writing, touring. I believe she went back to teaching people as well. She played guitar for Maggie Rogers, Lorde, Christine and the Queens. She also has a solo project called Rosie Ugly, which is, I believe, the name she was going by when she did both the 2019 and the 2023 interview. Her IMDb lists 2 credits, one for music for the podcast The Beautiful Liar, and another for her appearance on the TV show Austin City Limits. Again, this is how I know that Maggie Rogers was big enough to perform at Austin City Limits, because Elle is credited as the guitarist for Maggie's set on her episode of Austin City Limits. She also toured with Mumford & Sons, Haim, and Lizzo. That last one's a little unfortunate in hindsight, but that doesn't really reflect poorly on Elle in any real way. Now it's time to sort of address the elephant in the room. It's time for the big reveal. And I'm sure some of you that are familiar with Elle, or going to give the game away here, follow any of the actresses that were a part of Euphoria. You probably already know where this is going. You may have even seen the Nikki Swift article already. Around the same time she moved to Portland, which according to the Facebook post is probably 2016, Elle came out as gay, or lesbian, or whatever. Again, no idea. She came out as not liking guys, is all I'm saying. Which, you know, that's neat. It's a tough thing to do when you grew up in a pretty religious family, though. Take it from somebody who's known a lot of people, both at my church and at the religious college I ended up going to, that are either still in the closet or came out and it did not go well. This is not something that usually goes over super well when you eventually do come out, unless you've got like super chill or very liberal Christian parents. Because even to this day, like, there's still a lot of anti-gay sentiment among the religious population. So she says it was tough going as someone who grew up religious, but she's happier now than she's ever been. What did I say? I wrote this script like a month ago, so forgot that was in there. As of 2019, Elle is dating Barbie Ferreira. This is the reference I was making to if you follow the actresses from Euphoria. They both still follow each other on Instagram, but I haven't seen any posts with both of them in it for a while, but that may or may not mean anything. Elle posted a bunch on her story the day that I was updating this script. I haven't checked it recently. She doesn't make any real posts, so they're all just kind of like fleeting moments that if you're not on her Instagram the day that they're posted, you're going to miss them. But she was at like a party and Barbie wasn't there. But up until 2019, apparently they had been dating for at least a little while and they hadn't told anybody. But then they finally decided to go public with it and give away a few of the details about it and have said nothing about it since. So it could be that they're still dating and they've just decided to sort of go back to having it be private. I mean, it is a private life. Yeah, they kept the relationship low-key for a while before making it public, so they may be keeping it from the public eye, blah, 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 blah. But bear in mind, they could have broken up, but I have no way of confirming or denying any of that, so take any further references to their relationship with a grain of salt. 2019 is also the point where we get the last post made to the official Poema Instagram, which is just a picture of the sisters with the caption, still here, hi, and then they do like the peace sign emoji, and it's just the two of them, the two sisters in frame. But I digress. I'm going to use this space to say also that Elle was gifted a tattoo set and gave Barbie her first tattoo on her butt. So that's pretty funny. Now, we've sort of gotten the, like, personal life intrigue out of the way. I'd really like to get this COVID out of the way, if you know what I'm saying. But now that we've got that out of the way, let's sort of talk about what she's been up to in terms of her music since Poema ended. So in 2020, Elle released the song Bad Dog under her pseudonym Rosie Ugly. She also released the song Mirrors under the band name Dream Home in collaboration with Hotel Pools in 2021. I'm hoping to hear more from her soon, but it seems like she focuses more on touring and session work, so that may not materialize anytime soon, which is a little sad. I think since 2020, she's put out like 4 songs, which is not a lot, and 2 of them I think are less hers and more Hotel Pools, because they don't sound anything like the other stuff she's put out. Hey guys, different shirt Zach here, actually. Let me see if I can get the shirt in the actual shot. Yeah, pretty sick shirt. I got it. I think it was like Davinator merch, which I don't expect any of you to know who that is. Like a Yu-Gi-Oh guy. This is Pumpkin from Yu-Gi-Oh. If you go back on my channel, there's a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh videos, but that's neither here nor there. The reason I'm here is because, first of all, I wanted to sort of throw in like my top 5 Poema songs. I felt like that was something that maybe could have helped the video, maybe give you some ideas of what songs to check out first if you're planning on checking them out at any point. And second of all, there's been an update in the story. And I actually need to look it up. I forgot what the song's called. Okay, that may not have been obvious, but I went to get my computer. Okay, so, I made this video, and the stuff that the people I talk about have been putting out has been pretty spread out over time. And so I figured video's going to be dated at some point, assuming that they put more stuff out, but, maybe I got some time. But no, the second I recorded this, pretty much later in the day, I'm, like, checking Instagram, which, by the way, I never do. And, lo and behold, they've posted more stuff. Now, let's go ahead and get the Poema top 5 out of the way. Say hello to mine. I spent like $60 on this thing my freshman year of college. I ordered it from Europe, Britain specifically, because I grew up with this exact mine plush as a child, and they don't sell it anymore. And I couldn't find it anywhere secondhand except for $60 from the UK. So there you go. I lost both my mine and my plushie. My sister still has her Plusle, which as a child she drew all over and gave it tattoos. But I digress. So I've been listening to Poema for a long time. It's no surprise that there's a lot of songs from Poema that I'm a huge fan of, in spite of the fact that there's not really that many songs from Poema in general. So we're just going to run down the top 5. 5 is Echoes Off the Sky. I think it's like the title track off of their EP or first album or something like that. Second one is Your Song. I think one of the few songs that you could say is like explicitly like religious in its content. Good song, great song. Number 3 is Blue Sweater. That song's fantastic. It's just really good. Number 2 is 2 a.m., which is actually their most popular song. So if you're interested in listening to like the song that was the most popular from them, and it was also the one that was featured on the compilation album that I got, I would not say it's their best song though, because their best song and my favorite song is Clean Getaway. Clean Getaway. So if you're interested in checking them out, maybe start with either those 5, or maybe like start with like 2 a.m. or Clean Getaway, depending on whether you want to listen to the most popular or the one that I recommend the most. Either way, I would say just like go to their page on whatever streaming service you use and hit the shuffle all, and you have like a 99% chance of hitting a bop. So she posted on Instagram. Technically, it's part of like a group I guess called Singles Only. And it's with who I assume is Amanda Bantug is the other person involved in this song. I guess they've started like a 2-person group. I haven't listened to the song yet. I probably will later. Probably between recording this and editing it. So maybe like editing me can put like a note down here and be like, hey, it's a banger, or I thought it was fine. I'm probably not going to not like it, because I haven't not liked anything she's put out. But of course, I see this come across Instagram, and I never get on Instagram. So it's like, the fact that I even saw it at all is kind of a miracle. It could have been months before I even realized she had put something else out. And I just happened to open up Instagram, my once every 4 months that I open up Instagram. And the first post I see is one where she's tagged in it. And I see it and I'm like, oh, guess I gotta record an update. It's not like a huge update, but it is a sign that more music is coming, and that's really good as far as I'm concerned. What are you doing? But yeah, it's a sign that more music is coming, which I'm a huge fan of. And so if this is where she's going, she's like basically starting another 2-girl group to produce more music, I'm not gonna complain. I don't know if it'll be as good as Poema was. Again, still haven't listened to the song. Editor, me, can let you know how good it is. So, both sisters have moved on to have very successful lives and careers outside of each other. And they haven't posted on the Poema page since 2019. So what does this mean for hopes that they'll get back together? Well, they're still clearly on good terms, at least as recently as 2019, because they were in the same place, and they posted to the Poema page a picture of the two of them. This could mean a myriad of things. There wasn't really anything else put into the post. They didn't reply to any comments on the post. This post is like 5 years old at this point, and I mean, it's run its course. They haven't posted again. So it could mean like, hey guys, don't abandon this quite yet. We're not saying that we're never going to make Poema music again. Or it could just be, hey, if you were a fan of this band at one point and wondered if the members of it are still alive and still kicking. We are. If you're wondering if we're still cool with each other, we are. We're chilling. We're massive chilling. Or it could mean any myriad of things in between. I have no idea. Again, all it says is still here, hi, peace sign. What do I take that to mean? Am I supposed to be hopeful that more music will come in the future? Am I supposed to just assume that this is them being like, hey, we're not dead, but the project is, bye. Like, I don't know, it could mean anything. But it means that they're still on good terms. It means that they're still, like, talking to each other and hanging out. So, it's not unimaginable that this project could be resurrected at some point. You know, I hold on to the eventuality that one day they'll put more music out. You know, Elle mentions in an interview that she listened to a lot of Christian music in high school and was obsessed with it. Well, Poema was the Christian music I listened to in high school and was obsessed with. She may not like the fact that I'm calling Poema Christian music. I'm not going to call Elle's new stuff Christian because I'm pretty sure she's not religious anymore, which is a shame. But I will say that I feel a very strong kinship with her. Not only because I was a huge fan of their music growing up, but also listening to them talk about their experiences growing up. I'm like, okay, I can relate to that, you know, big time. I will say that there's a few things that, if you get into like the content of their music, there's some things that you could talk about. Clearly, their music is very autobiographical. Clearly they talk about their own experiences. A lot of it is just like, oh, I'm really into this cute boy. Hey, I want to wear this sweater I got from this cute boy. Oh, hey, I got a call from this cute boy. I'm going to go on a date with this cute boy, which obviously turned out to be cap later on, at least for Elle. You know, clearly, Shay has a cute boy in her life that she can get a cute blue sweater from. But Elle, she don't swing that way anymore. Or maybe she didn't ever. Maybe it was just all written by Shay, or at the very least, anything Elle wrote, she just sort of changed the genders. I hope that you have found something in this to hold on to and add to your own lexicon. Add to your own sort of playlist, if you will. I don't know if you're interested in picking up any of Poema's stuff. I would say their last album on Tooth and Nail is probably their best album. They also have a Christmas album that I did not make any reference to. That's also pretty good. I'm one of those people that I really only listen to Christmas music at Christmas time. So, since getting back into Poema, I haven't had a chance to really get into that music at a time where I'm really feeling the Christmas spirit. Yeah, I could have done Christmas in July, but that's not really who I am. At this point, I'm really more interested in getting to Halloween because Halloween's my favorite holiday. But I'll put it this way. I hope that you like some of the music that you've checked out as a result of me talking about it. I hope that you have learned something about these people, that you've sort of developed some sort of interest in them, not only as people, but as musicians, or even as painters. Maybe you'll go buy a print from Shay, commission her. Maybe you'll go check out Elle's Rosie Ugly stuff she did with hotel pools. Maybe if you live in the LA area, you'll hire her or something. I don't know. I'm hoping that something comes out of this. Ultimately, what I'm trying to get out of this for me is I've been thinking about Poema for, well, I would say probably like 10 years at this point, but more to the point, I've been thinking about them a lot and thinking about this video for months. So I've been wanting to put it out there. I wrote this script a while ago and I wanted to put it out there. I'll end by saying that in researching this video, I found that YouTube channel that the dad created. I mentioned that already. It hosts the video of Elle's first performance, the one in the Starbucks. It's wild to think that from that performance in a Starbucks in New Mexico would come a career like what Elle has, not only a career where she was in a band that was signed to the same label as people like Thousand Foot Crutch, Demon Hunter, Under Oath, Amberlynn, even like Jeremy Camp, Hawk Nelson, being label mates with those types of people, but then going on to go independent, produce another album, and then just like finding herself, you know, being a barista for a while, going back to music, becoming a session musician, touring with some big artists, people like Mumford and Sons, Lizzo, Lord, people that, you know, the average person would recognize. And maybe thousands, tens, hundreds, thousands, millions of people have seen her perform guitar and don't even realize it. They have no idea who they are. No idea that Elle has this past and has these bodies of work that you can go check out. Nobody thinks about the person who's just playing guitar for, you know, a random artist, some, you know, touring musician, someone who just happens to be in the studio when somebody needs a guitar line, somebody that just happens to be in the studio when they need a riff or something like that. It's definitely something, and it's crazy to think. I wonder, again, if anybody in that Starbucks listened to them perform and went, yeah, this person's going to have a career in music. I guess I'll end this off with the cover Elle and her dad posted of O Little Town of Bethlehem from 2007. It's really good. Again, this is from 2007, so this is like the year before they formed Poema. So you can kind of see how them as performers evolve. She performs in 2001. She does this cover with her dad in 2007. They form Poema, release an album on Tooth and Nail Records in like 2009, 2010. Go independent in 2014. She moves to, I think, LA in like 2018 or 2019. Goes on tour with a bunch of people from like 2016 to present, and just goes on to have a big, successful career that isn't like crazy. You're not going to be seeing any sort of like Netflix documentaries on what it was like to be Elle Puckett, but you're going to see this YouTube video. And just know that if either of you, Elle or Shay, are watching this and you've gotten this far into the video, just know that I've been watching you guys, listening to you guys since I was very young, relatively speaking, since I was a teenager. And I'm a huge fan of you guys. And if you guys want to bring Poema back, I'm going to be one of the first people to absolutely lose his mind. I said I was going to end on that video, but I'm actually going to end on a story that sort of gets into illustrating the fact that I've been following these guys for so long. Their album that was put out on Tooth and Nail featured a song called Clean Getaway, which talks about a parent abandoning them and going off, and there's a lot of references to the only thing they left was their last name, which sort of says to me that it was their dad. But after researching for this video, I found that they were basically raised by their dad, and there's no reference of their mom or any clips of their mom anywhere. So the song must have been about their mom. Either that, or they were just sort of putting feelings into a song without being concerned about whether or not all of the words they were saying fit perfectly with their own individual experiences. But I remember I don't know if they made a music video for it, but on the official audio release of that song, because it was my favorite song off the album by far, I listened to it all the time. When I would watch the official audio or the lyric video of it on YouTube, I found a comment from somebody who had made their YouTube name Poema's dad. And they had made a comment along the lines of something like apologizing to them. And the official Poema account responded and said, "Thanks, Dad, LOL." So clearly they had a good sense of humor about the whole thing. That sort of endeared me to them quite a bit more. Made them feel a lot more down to earth. So, yeah. If you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe. I've started the script for the video that's going to come after this. If this video does well, I may put out something else in the interim. Something a little less meaty, a little less juicy. Talk about something I find interesting but doesn't necessarily require a ton of research. But in the meantime, I'm Zach. Thanks for watching this video. Hit that subscribe. Like if you liked the video. Leave a comment. Let me know if you went and checked Poema or any of their other stuff out. And I'll see you guys in the next one.